Good evening. This is the Dudley Conservation Commission meeting for June 29th. It's 6:35 p.m. I'll call the meeting to order.
Nancy Bukovic.
Yep.
Samantha Costello.
George Slingo.
Fran Mikulajczyk.
Okay, first on the agenda is 123 Oxford Ave, 3Rs Realty Corp. Notice of intent for sediment control basin, restore connection to the isolated wetland by removing a portion of the secondary access driveway. I'll open the public hearing at 6:36.
Hello, I'm Marian DePinto, Three Oaks Environmental, representing the applicant in this case. It goes back to, we had a request for determination before you earlier in the spring for the wetland boundaries. So those were set under the determination, the wetland boundaries on site and across the street. What happened back then was during a winter rainstorm, there was some turbidity that reached the brook across the street into the wetland, and eventually some turbidity in the French River. It was reported to DEP, and DEP had requested the applicant do something to control runoff from the site. They did things immediately, put stone check dams in. Your plan should show you where the current stone check dams are located, and straw wattles. And actually there's multiple stone check dams, and what happened, some of the material had very fine particulates in it, silty, and that's what got suspended. So what they've done is they have multiple check dams, and they applied flocculant and caught it in hay bales. So that has not happened since. I've been checking the site with each rainstorm, and we have not had any additional turbidity off the site. So what's out there now is effective. What they would like to do is take the stormwater basins and turn them sideways in the buffer zone. That's stormwater, I'm sorry, sedimentation basin. The material that's being brought in now is pretty much loam, and as they're moving along on the site, they are seeding it, We've got two the same, One of the basins is labeled as temporary. We want to make sure that the problem doesn't keep on going, and we wanted to have a backup so it has to pass through two sedimentation basins. As time goes on in the site, the loam it's loamed and seeded, and there's no additional runoff, turbid runoff. One sedimentation basin will be all that's necessary. DEP, in issuing the file number letter, and I have a copy of the letter, I don't know if you were able to get it. I've got a copy of the file number letter. They asked a number of questions that we responded to, and I have the response to that with me today that I can give you. They wanted to know what we had done on the site to date to fix the problems, and we had a vac truck out there that took out one area of about 100 square feet of sediment in an isolated wetland, and another area of a couple hundred, 200 to 400 square feet, if I remember right, of sediment. And then across the street, where there was a delta of sediment that had gotten out into the brook, we believe it's from the road. You can see there's a gully on the side of the road, and the water runs right down the side of that street and over the embankment. But under the circumstances, the vac truck was there. We took the sediment out anyway. So DEP asked for a summary of what we did, and I submitted that to them. They also wanted to know, let's see, the elevations. So we have the buffer zone work on one plan, and the detail sheet. And then there's the crossing itself. Back before the land was purchased by the applicant, back prior to the 80s, sorry, 70s, a crossing was put in that's a second crossing to the site, and it isolated the wetland. There's no evidence of any culvert underneath the crossing. And there's a really nice shrub swamp wetland right on the upstream side of that crossing. And I was concerned that it was a vernal pool, and if we remove the crossing, it would dewater it. I've been out there, I've seen some frogs, but I haven't seen any egg masses. But the water was really deep, and I couldn't get quite out there where they may have been. So what we decided to do was to take the crossing down so that it still has a little bit of a lip. It's going to be a wetland, but it's going to allow the water to stay in the shrub swamp, but it'll connect it. That shrub swamp will no longer be isolated. It'll be bordering vegetative wetland. So it'll add on to the amount of bordering vegetative wetland on the site as mitigation for any kind of impacts that were caused by the turbidity and runoff from the site. Let's see. The other thing that was reported to us was that up in the gravel pit next to this butter, it has a farm field. There was a ditch back in 2005 that she asked if the ditch could be relocated because all the stormwater coming down the ditch was going right to a farm field and flooding it in the springtime. So back in 2005, that ditch was realigned and it was moved down further. It goes through a culvert under her cart path into the wetland eventually. It goes through a buffer zone about 80 feet and then wetland. Somebody reported to DEP that there was turbidity into that wetland area, and I did observe some turbidity, some fine dust on the leaves and so on. Nothing major. You know, there was some of the stone washed out at the crossing into the buffer zone. So what the landowners did was to put about 100 feet, linear feet of stone in the channel. And we've now observed with each rainstorm that there's no more turbidity. It's cut down on the velocity coming through there so that the crossing in the cart path isn't washing out. So those are the kinds of things that have been done to date. Back on the removing the crossing, just a small section of that crossing will be removed. There'll be 2-to-1 slopes. They'll be seeded, loamed and seeded, so they don't erode. And the crossing itself is going to be planted with wetland vegetation and a wetland seed mix. I have the abutters list with this certificate of mailing for that I can give you, and a copy of my response to DEP. Let's see if there's anything else.
We do have the certificate of mailing, Mary Ann, so all we need is, yeah.
Okay. Oh, good.
Just need the,
Did Mac
Were you
go up to
able
the
to get
site?
the
yes.
file number? Okay.
Do you need me to make a copy of that?
No, I've got it. Okay. This is for you.
Thank you.
Pretty much it's because there's work that they want to do in the buffer zone to control erosion. So there's the sedimentation basins in the buffer zone. A few years ago, there was logging that was done under Chapter 61 of the DCR, forestry, that was logged up to about a 50-foot setback from the wetland edge. And that's basically where the basin's going to go, in that open area that exists right now. Any questions, or?
Are there any questions from the board?
No.
Are there any questions from the butters?
I'd like to see what
Come up and state your name for the records, please. I know who you are, but
I'm Bob Gribb. I just was curious of what's going on, and so.
Okay. Do you have the most current plans?
I got
I
this
don't
one.
have a director big enough to put, I have itty-bitty, you don't want to record it. But yeah, this is the crossing, this is Oxford Ave, and right across the street, it's a side street called, that comes in at the stop sign. Yeah, exactly. So there's a dirt, gravel cart path that comes through here that was put in by the previous landowner. A section of that's coming out and up to the wetland flagging on either side and brought down
There's a
to
crossing.
an elevation that's higher than the very bottom of this wetland, but still wetland area. So it'll connect that wetland up there with this
There's a
one.
culvert. There's one.
The other plan?
And where's the culvert?
No, there'll be no culvert, this is gonna be open. Oh, the culvert under the road is down here. So it'll connect that wetland right through, and then this channel will run down this direction. That's the road right there, yes. Yeah, the head wall, that's where the stream comes out, down, it'll go to the river.
They're all good with that? They're good with it.
Concrete head wall.
Yeah, this is all gonna be stabilized, because currently, it's all gravel and so on. but
Oh, okay,
it'll
that's
be
that little
loamed
thing,
and
yeah.
seeded so that,
Yeah, I'm sure. it would be,
It's-
I just curious
Yeah.
what's
They
going
small.
on.
well, the other thing that's happening is that right in this area here is gonna be sedimentation basins. I have plans that show the grading for it. Here we go, yeah, actually, I do have this plan. This is the road here. And the sedimentation basin. And basically, the water is being diverted from, coming down this direction, is going to be directed into the basin from this side. And it'll pass through before it reaches the wetland. It'll be, have time to settle out, and there won't be
I
a
live
sediment.
in the neighborhood, so I was curious. what's
Okay.
going on, so they sent me a
Okay, yeah, but I noticed,
letter. Right,
yeah.
right. All right.
All right.
Whatever you guys
Do you have any more questions, or?
No, I just wanted to see what's going on, that's all.
All right.
Thank you.
No more questions from the board?
Did Matt look at this? And, well, Matt recommends that we issue a standard order of conditions, so I'm gonna say, I think we should
Well, let's
issue.
close the public.
We're gonna close the public hearing.
I'll close the public hearing at 6:50. Now I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we issue a standard order of conditions with the recommendation of Matt Morrow, our environmental consultant.
I'll second it for 123 Oxford Ave, 3 R's Realty.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay, we don't have minutes, so
Anything else?
nothing else.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion's been made to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded at 6:51. 6:49, rather. 51. I'll get it right.
Unanimous.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.